Hey, any youth leaders out there? Serving with youth in the church is probably one of the most enjoyable callings, but it brings with it a lot of responsibility. How do we effectively lead this rising generation? Well, I have good news for you. Leading Saints has organized the Young Saints virtual library, where we have 20 plus hours of presentations all about how to lead youth. We cover topics like how to help youth transition into adulthood, how to help them avoid loneliness, how to handle smartphones in class, and we even go over scientific data about how Latter-day Saint youth differ from other youth. If you'd like to review the Young Saints library at no cost for 14 days, simply go to leadingsaints.org/14. That's leadingsaints.org/14. While you're at it, we'll give you access to all of our virtual libraries that cover several leadership-related topics. So click the link in the show notes or simply visit leadingsaints.org/14. Today, I find myself in St. George, Utah, in the stake president's office. I don't know how I got here, but I'm here. Hopefully, I'm not in trouble. But the stake president's office of the Little Valley Stake, and I have a team in front of me that's we're going to explore an idea and approach that they took here. Let's just do some introductions. Steve?
Sure. I'm Steve Chase. I'm one of the counselors in the Young Men's presidency of the stake.
Are you on the High Council, or is
correct?
This?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Great. How long have you been in the stake or in this area?
Well, so in the area since 2005, approximately 2015 in this stake.
Awesome. Lucy, you next. Introduce yourself.
My name is Lucy Hansen. I was on the council that chose
on the youth council?
Yeah, on the youth council that was able to plan state conference this year.
And what year in school are you?
I am a sophomore, so I'll graduate in 2024.
Awesome. Ashlie?
I'm Ashlie Bundy. I'm the stake Young Women's president, and I've just been in a little over a year.
Nice. Is this your first go at this type of calling, or were you ward Young Women's president? Or
I've never been the president. I've served in Young Women's and primary and all that, but first go at president for sure.
Awesome. Brad?
My name's Brad Simister. I'm the second counselor in the stake presidency. Our family's been here since about 2006. We've been serving as a stake presidency for 6 years now.
Nice. Great. Awesome. And President Thompson, right? He is in the room, but he may chime in if he feels so inclined. He talks in a mic enough, right? So awesome. So where does this story begin? With Brad, do you want to introduce us to sort of what happened and what led to this, what we're going to talk about?
You bet. So typically as we prepare stake conference as a stake presidency, we sit down typically 2 to 3 months out, and we start to think about ideas and thoughts of what we should plan and prepare for. And it must have been 8 to 10 weeks out before stake conference. We were meeting with the youth committee and President Thompson. And President, you can correct me, but he felt and had an idea that our stake youth committee should plan and prepare our stake conference.
Nice.
And so we meet in the High Council room. He opened the door, he walked in and said, "Hey guys, I'd like to invite you all to plan and prepare our stake conference." And everyone went kind of quiet and awkward because they didn't know what he was talking about, and they didn't really understand. I think everybody thought they were going to be speaking for stake conference, and everyone was a little nervous about that. And he said, you figure out, one, what do you want to hear about, and what do you want us to tell your parents? And you can plan the music, the prayers, everything about stake conference. And then he said, "Thanks so much. Any questions?" Everyone was kind of awkwardly silent, didn't know what to think. The youth, especially, I think, all of us. And then he left. And then occasionally we sat there and we sat down and started trying to formulate game plans and some ideas and thoughts. And it took a few sessions, I think, before we got everyone to loosen up and talk about it.
Yeah. What do you remember, Lucy, from that experience? Were you nervous that you were going to be speaking in state conference or something?
I didn't really feel like I was going to be speaking, but I just realized that we had control over who's speaking and what they're speaking about and what we want to hear and what we want our parents to know, or like that can help us as youth.
Yeah. So was there anything that came to mind? I mean, immediately? I mean, what are you going to do with state conference? Did any initial ideas come immediately, or was it a long go?
It kind of took like a while, just like hearing from everyone else and what they wanted to hear. I was like, oh yeah, like that would be really nice to hear. Or I just feel like us choosing the topics, we were able to engage more in state conference because we know we want to listen to it and we want to learn from it. Mm-hmm. So we were able to take more out of state conference.
That's cool. What were you thinking as maybe youth leaders in the stake? Was it daunting or what do you think, Ashlie?
Well, at first it was just kind of getting them to actually talk.
They
were just kind of like, eh. But then we actually had a meeting one time. It just happened that President Simister wasn't there. No, none of the, this actual stake presidency were there. And I just really got them to open up. And I was actually quite shocked at the things that they said that they wanted to hear about. They really wanted to talk about anxiety, depression, ADHD. They were interested in learning more about the second coming.
Oh, really? Wow.
And just really enlightening. Like we just had a really casual, I think they all let their guard down and just really talked about just things that they were experiencing in their lives. And it was really eye-opening for me to kind of see where they were coming from,
Yeah.
So then when we asked them to give ideas for who they would like to speak, a lot of them, I would say almost all of them offered, I loved that they offered their own young women's either leaders or their young women president or like a bishop or someone that they thought was great that they would love to hear from, which they hear from them often, I would assume. But it made me feel like they had a connection with some of their leaders, that they were doing something right, and in fact, one girl even offered her young woman president to talk to us all about like connecting with teenagers because she felt like she was so good at that. She was one that was like, send me a picture of you in your prom dress. I want to see you, things like that. And it just warmed my heart to think that these women were making such an impact on the youth's life and things like that. So,
Steve, anything come to mind as far as this initial step?
No, I would agree. I think early on, as President Simister said, there was a lot of silence and I guess questioning exactly what was going to be asked of them. I think throughout the different meetings we had, I would agree that the hardest part sometimes was getting the youth to engage or speak. I actually was not at that successful meeting you had. Yeah. But it sounds like it was interesting. Maybe fewer leaders being there might have helped anyway. But yeah, getting the youth to engage. And I think Lucy was maybe an exception to that. You were one of the ones that were, more open to give opinions and thoughts, which was so helpful. But that's a challenge, I think, for adult leaders to kind of pry thoughts and things out of our youth. And I don't know exactly why that is. If they're, and maybe you can comment on that, Lucy. Are they afraid to share ideas? We think we're going to, knock them down or shoot them down. I don't exactly know why, but then when they finally do offer, their opinions or thoughts, I think the spirit's behind that, of course, and kind of obviously guided where we went.
Yeah. That's awesome. As President Simister, I'm curious, like, obviously, President Thompson comes in and lays this out and walks away. Did you maybe give more structure or understanding of like the different meetings involved and what, how much time they had and what they really did need to fill? Or
Exactly. So interestingly enough, we had our FSY kickoff weekend as well, the same weekend. So we were planning
same weekend as state conference.
Oh, so wow. We were planning kind of an FSY day plus a dance. So we started off, we laid out the schedule. We started with a steak breakfast, and the youth had a kind of an afternoon where we had a speaker and some lunch together and some activities. Then we planned the evening session, and then we had a dance, and then got up with the leadership and in the morning, and then on to so we set out the structure of the weekend, and then we just started talking about it little by little. Nice. One great principle is President Thompson, I assume they felt like they had this idea, we should run with it. he never came in and dominated any situation. He completely just came to me every once in a while and said, how's everything going? And I'm sure as the stake president wondering how's state conference going, there was a little anxiety for him.
I hope I don't have 2 hours that I have to fill, right?
But honestly, that was a great thing to see. He would just check in with me and say, tell me how it's going. Could you give me a little update?
Yeah.
And that's all.
Yeah. And so maybe in your weekly meetings or every so often, you would just say, we're good. We'll make sure we have something there.
Exactly. And especially the first few that we were struggling to get some traction. I said, well, we're coming along, President, but we're going to get there. So it took us a little bit, but then it started coming.
Yeah. So, Lucy, maybe tell if you went to a different stake who maybe want to do something similar and you were standing in front of their youth council, like what advice would you give at the beginning that maybe you wish you had at the beginning of this planning process?
I think just like everyone else has been saying, it was kind of awkward and nervous the first few meetings that we had talking about state conference, but just sharing your opinion and telling everyone like, oh, this speaker's from my ward. They've done amazing talks before, like just putting their name out there, just so that you can share what they've shared with like the entire stake instead of just your ward.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm curious, so I mean, I'm thinking even in a typical state conference, you have a leadership meeting, you've got a Saturday night meeting, sometimes it's adult meeting or whatever, and then you have your general session, right? And so did you do a leadership meeting and was that for the youth or how did that work?
We sure did. So I would say what the youth planned mostly was the adult session and the general session.
Gotcha.
The leadership meeting, we worked together as stake presidency and oversaw that. But as far as the planning of the adult session, we asked them, what do you want us to talk to your parents about?
Okay.
And so that's where the focus was as far as who's going to speak, what we're going to talk about, what topics and whatnot.
Yeah. And in the adult session, were the youth invited as well, or you just took what you wanted to talk to the parents about and you ran with it from there?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. So they helped plan speakers and musical numbers and everything. And then it was just the adults.
Okay. Okay. And that's sometimes it's an hour to 2 hours. Did it end up to be about 2 hours or maybe you don't remember? I mean, it was a good
hour and a half maybe or something.
Okay. Gotcha. So, let's just talk about like feeling, you have the adult session and you have the general session. What did you notice from just working with the youth council? Like how did they begin to feel that time or what ideas came to the surface? Do you remember anything specific?
I just feel like as we brought up topics and as we brought up speakers, people were like more excited for state conference. I feel like state conference is like usually for youth, it's more of an adult like meetings and sessions and stuff. But just to have like us youth put an input for all of like the topics and the speakers and hearing from like people we want to hear from and we love to hear from, I feel like that makes everyone like happier and more willing to focus more in state conference.
Did you have any youth that actually spoke in one of these two meetings or?
I think we had 2 youth speakers in the general session, and I think that they did a really good job speaking.
Cool. Did nobody want to step forward and volunteer? Did you have to convince any of your peers to do that? Or?
There were just like people, like friends that were on the council that they think their friends would do a really good job at doing it, and their talks have been good before, so they kind of just like put them up for it because they knew that they would be happy to do it.
Yeah. I'm curious, Steve or Ashlie, if like you mentioned some of these topics, anxiety, mental health type of topics, and then the second coming. Was there a connection between the second coming and some of these mental health, or was just these? And did you cover all these, or were these just initial ideas?
Yeah, I think we covered most of them. It was interesting to I was actually super excited for state conference just to see how everything played out, because they were kind of all over the place topics. But I think they flowed together really well. And I do feel like we covered all of them. I loved that, like I mentioned before, one of them suggested one of their young women's presidents to talk about like connecting with teenagers. And I thought her talk was really fantastic. And I loved that the topics that they shared, you could tell that, I don't know, sometimes you feel like youth just want to be disconnected from like they don't think their parents are cool, or, it's not cool, certain church things. But you could tell like the root of what they were suggesting, that they like desperately wanted to connect with their parents. They wanted to know how to do that better. They wanted to learn about the second coming. They wanted to grow and like manage their anxiety, like all those things. It kind of broke my heart, but at the same time, it was like so refreshing, because I was like, yes, this is what we can teach them. This is how we can help them. And I do feel like the speakers, I don't know, everyone else can touch. I feel like they did fantastic. So, yeah.
Okay. I would just agree 100% with that. I think, in hearing the topics that they were interested to learn about or to hear about was a little eye-opening to me, to hear the mental health side of things as an area that they wanted to focus on was took me by surprise a little bit. I mean, obviously we know that it's out there, but didn't realize it was such an area of potential interest or concern with all of our youth. But another thing that I thought was interesting, and maybe President comment, as he mentioned, it was our FSY kickoff, and the speaker that we had was excellent. And I don't know that we intended what he spoke about to fall in line exactly with that, but it seemed like it really ended up, just kind of reinforcing that whole theme, for the youth, for resiliency and adversity, overcoming adversity, and those types of things. So it just worked out really good.
Yeah, interesting. I'm curious, just in that process we touched on earlier about getting the youth to talk. They've been delegated this responsibility, and now what's your ideas, guys? And you're standing at the whiteboard ready to mark these down, and it's silence. Anything you learn? I mean, because this is a general concern that a lot of youth leaders deal with is, man, I want to let the youth lead, but they don't seem to be wanting to lead, right? And so anything that you learned in this process that really helped the youth get engaged and share ideas? And
maybe I make a comment on that. I'm maybe a perfectionist generally in my life, and so I definitely am guilty of that. Of it needs to be just so, but letting it not be exactly how you think it should be, and I think it ended up being better that way. Yeah. I think again with the spirit behind it and the strength of the youth, their ideas, it was better than anything I think we could have planned as adults.
Yeah, that's great. Any other thoughts with that? Lucy, any thoughts as far as what you saw getting youth to speak up? Or if not, that's fine. But
I will say, I think that when President first came in and asked us to do this, that we were at the whiteboard. President Simister was up there doing all those things. And one of the first things the kids said was, can we just do it later? And so we actually pushed it back to 11. And when President was like, yeah, we can, I think all of them were like, really? Like, you care about us that much that like, you're okay with us sleeping in an hour? So
they want to do the whole state conference later.
Yeah, and we did. We had it at 11, and
nice.
It was fine. I mean, I think it was great for everyone, but I think President was so great in allowing them to have those suggestions, and have their input and see it through. And like you said, take that step back. And maybe for me, I'm just like Brother Chase. I was like, this might not be that great. Some, not necessarily the state conference part, but some of the activities, like they wanted to have Chick-fil-A, and I was like, we did that last time, but it's what they really, really wanted,
Uh-huh.
And
so they had Chick-fil-A like as a refreshment?
At lunch. This was during for our FSY thing.
Oh, yeah. Gotcha.
State conference Chick-fil-A. That's also
like,
good.
These are bold ideas.
Yeah, like we said, that was all the same weekend. But so yeah, I really had to take a step back as well and just let them lead. And I for sure think it came across better than what we could have done, especially because of Lucy. She was fantastic.
Yeah.
I have to tell a funny story about the situation. So as they're coming up with these ideas and speakers, I failed to maybe teach some general principles that initially, and the kids started getting excited, thinking about who they wanted to speak, who would sing. And next thing you know, I get a call, hey, we're going to be singing at your state conference. And so some of the kids were reaching out to people and say, hey, would you sing or would you speak? And so we kind of had to rein things in. So I know as I invited one youth to speak, she said, oh yeah, my friend already told me I'll be speaking. And so we got out of the order of things a little bit, which was good because my wife and I were talking about it, and she said, isn't that awesome that they were so excited they wanted to get out and get after it? Yeah. And so, anyways, some good lessons to learn. It was great.
And in hindsight, I mean, it's good to mention that, but also with my own personal experience, I really didn't know how a state conference came together until I was in a stake presidency. And I'm like, oh, so who asks who? Like, oh, we have to approve it.
Exactly.
And so for the youth to see that working, another 10, 15 years when they're on high councils or in stake young women's presidencies, they'll have a better perspective of these simple processes that we sometimes take for granted.
Absolutely.
I think President Simister was really good in doing that because he actually set them down and said, this is how it works. And he told them about how to, create an agenda, how to, the formal way to do things. He even told them about how you, call and approve someone to speak at an event. And it was just a really natural way for them to learn things because you're right, they will be there. Mm-hmm. I feel like it was yesterday when I was a youth and here I am. So
yeah. So even though maybe some youth got out ahead of with invitations, was that all these invitations come from the stake presidency then? Is that?
Yeah, when it was all said and done, we approved all speakers and the agenda, and we extended all the invitations. But yeah, it was fantastic.
Yeah, nice. And there was no attempt to maybe get David Archuleta to come sing or anything.
Maybe he thought he's waiting for the call. I don't know. Maybe he didn't get the call.
Yeah, that's great. And then, so at some point during this process, I imagine you brought the agenda into stake presidency meeting, and that's when things were approved and assignments made to reach out to certain speakers.
Correct. And what was awesome is when we said they could select the speakers, it's pretty rare that one would not be approved. And so, just recently, someone in one of the wards said, one of the youth told the leaders, said, what was crazy about that is they really let us do it. They didn't just pretend they let us. They really let us pick the topics and the speakers. And so that was after the conference. Somebody made that comment, which I thought was fantastic.
Yeah, that's encouraging. Were there any ideas that maybe made it to the stake presidency desk that they were asked to maybe rethink or?
Can you think of one? I can't. I mean,
nobody went rogue.
They asked to change the time, and we said, "You bet." President Thompson instantly said, "You bet. We'll go at 11."
I don't think there were too many extreme requests.
No, I think that was about as extreme as
lucked out. Yeah.
Nice. Well, and my vote to put that in the handbook, 11 o'clock state conference. Let's do that. So, that's awesome. So the day arrives, Lucy. What do you remember? I mean, you talk about this excitement. Were you a little bit more encouraged to go to state conference that day?
Yeah. So I was just a little bit more excited because I knew what the topics were going to be talked, people who was going to talk on each topic. And I knew and I felt the spirit that I really needed to listen to certain talks or just really engage with the talks instead of just sitting there trying to distract myself, a different state conference or something. And I feel like just having us plan it makes us want to listen more and want to learn more from it because we know what's going to happen and we know who's going to speak on it and that they've done good in the past. So we just want to listen to what they have to say about that topic.
And was there how did you communicate to the stake in general that this was the approach with this stake conference? Did you, weeks leading up, did you say, hey, this is going to be a special one? Or was it during the meeting? Or how did the stake know what was going on? Or did they?
They didn't know much. I don't think we said much to the stake as we opened the conference Sunday night in the adult session.
Saturday night.
Saturday night. Thank you. As we opened the session, we let them know what we did. And it's interesting. It's one thing to say the youth planned it, but I felt the whole thing was done through inspiration. And I really felt the conference was led by the Spirit in the fact that we had parents thinking about what are on the kids' minds. And all of a sudden there was something happening where our adults were thinking about our children, our youth were listening to the topics they wanted to hear about. There was something that settled over our conference that was really wonderful and inspiring.
Yeah.
It was more than just the youth saying, I get to pick the speakers, what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, exactly. Anything else as far as the day of that any of you noticed that would be worth mentioning?
I would just say, I think the whole process of having the youth lead, I think just made them feel special and just feel valued, their opinion matters. Yeah. I just don't know that they always feel, I don't think anyone ever intends that, but when you're a teenager, you're they probably don't really care about me that much, what I want to hear or feel but I just feel like they felt so heard and that was just a really awesome way for us to connect with them. And they did open up, like I said, so much. when they let their guard down. And then also as a parent, like listening to it, because I have teenagers as well as a parent, and then also being in the room, it hit different. Like it just all came full circle. And I just realized how amazing the youth are and how much they really do want to be good. They really do want to do good. And they really they're just trying so hard, and they love their parents. They love church. It's just, they don't always express it that way. They don't always know the right way to say and do things. They're teenagers, but they are so important and so valued in our church.
Yeah. I think we fall into this trap just in general with leadership is we want those we lead to know that we love them and that we value them. But typically what we do is we didn't just stand in front of a room and just say, hey, we love you, we value you, but they can sometimes feel like words. But when you say, no, we value you enough, we're going to actually turn the state conference over to you and you're going to guide this, under our direction or whatnot. But that really instills a sense of value, and love. And really shifts the dynamic.
Absolutely, sure. Yeah.
Any other day of observations or that we haven't hit on that sums it up?
I think so.
Okay. All right. What about with hindsight now? You did it. Maybe you do it again. I don't know. And maybe you'll turn it over to the primary kids next. I don't know. See how that goes. So, but with hindsight, anything else that you learned that if you're going back in time to that moment when President Thompson walked in that you would encourage?
Well, and I don't know if President Thompson wants to say anything, but I think you had felt like it was a positive thing and that it may be something in the future to consider again. So
we're getting a nod, folks.
Yeah. Yeah.
I like just this model of delegation that we're witnessing right now. Right. No, he's asked you to speak to this. So that's good. So that's great. Anything we're missing in general, any point in the preparation or anything else?
I think, and this has been said, but maybe just to mention again, it's harder to maybe do that, to work with our youth, and whether it's this, state conference example or other things, it's obviously there's more effort to do it that way instead of just taking care of it yourself. And I'm thinking about my home life as well with my own children, but it is much easier just to take care of things yourself. But there's power when we do take that extra time, spend the extra effort to let our youth lead or encourage them to lead, show them how to lead. Because as you've all said, they will be our leaders here within the next 10, 15 years. But there's a spiritual, I think, force behind that too. If we can force ourselves as adults to maybe back up a little bit, step back and let them take over.
Nice. Yeah. So obviously in church, we want to point individuals, especially youth, towards Christ. And we hope that there's experiences that we have that do that, right? We have our typical Sunday school lessons that we teach these principles, but just like, how did this experience, and don't maybe try and speak for the youth council in general. It doesn't have to be just Lucy's experience, but how do you feel like this changed you as a disciple of Jesus Christ?
I think that it made me come closer to Jesus Christ because, we had to speak to him, we had to say prayers and just ask him what all the youth need to know. And so for me, I was able to communicate better with him because I wanted to know what everyone else wanted to hear. And not just me, I just wanted to help all the different youth. And I feel like me being able to talk to him about it, I learned so much, and I became closer to him because I was constantly asking him and just reassuring that what I want to hear is what all the youth want to hear.
And that concludes this How I Lead interview. I hope you enjoyed it. And I would ask you, could you take a minute and drop this link in an email, on social media, in a text, wherever it makes the most sense, and share it with somebody who could relate to this experience. And this is how we develop as leaders, just hearing what the other guy's doing, trying some things out, testing, adjusting for your area. And that's where great leadership's discovered, right? So we would love to have you share this with somebody in this calling or a related calling, and that would be great. And also, if you know somebody, any type of leader who would be a fantastic guest on the How I Lead segment, reach out to us. Go to leadingsaints.org/contact. Maybe send this individual an email letting them know that you're going to be suggesting their name for this interview. We'll reach out to them and see if we can line them up. So again, go to leadingsaints.org/contact, and there you can submit all the information and let us know. And maybe they will be on a future How I Lead segment on the Leading Saints podcast. And remember, go to leadingsaints.org/14 to access our full Young Saints virtual library.
It came as a result of the position of leadership which was imposed upon us by the God of heaven, who brought forth a restoration of the gospel of Jesus Christ. And when the declaration was made concerning the only true and living church upon the face of the earth, we were immediately put in a position of loneliness, the loneliness of leadership, from which we cannot shrink nor run away, and to which we must face up with boldness and courage and ability.